All right, hello and welcome to the house that I actually grew up in. It has a little bit of obviously sentimentality, and throughout my whole journey as a writer, my background has really been a big role in that. So one of the things that I've really been missing of late is the ability to go out and sell my books, obviously, but a bigger piece that I miss about that's kind of a side piece of that, is the ability to talk to people about my books and talk to visitors and talk to readers and talk to people about why I do what I do. And so that is why I created this Facebook Live, and why we are, I've got some questions that we're going to answer tonight. And if you've got any questions as you're watching, if you're watching live, go ahead and type them in the comments, and I've got a wonderful assistant who can let me know that as well. So without any further ado, we can go ahead and get started with the questions that came in earlier. So first one, tell more about my background, and this is from Tracy. So I was born and raised in West Michigan, pretty much lived here my whole life with the exception of living up in Mackinac City for a couple of years, which actually played a big role in who I am and what I write as well. I've always loved history, always loved traveling. I can get my ideas from just about everywhere, everywhere that I go. In fact, I had a random person ask me a random question about Michigan history, and she teaches third grade, and if I knew of any good books, and then I'm like, well, maybe I should do a third grade history series. So I can get the ideas from just about anywhere. As I mentioned before, I worked in Mackinac City before I got my job as a junior high history, social studies, and religion teacher here in Grand Rapids. At one of the best schools in the city. We're awesome, and our staff is awesome. I also have a great family. We're very close, see each other as often as possible, and I just really draw a lot from that as well. Next, from Linda. Why did I want to become an author? It was never really even a conscious decision. I didn't wake up one day, or I don't even know that I ever really grew up wanting to be an author. It just kind of happened to me. When I read this question, it kind of hit me, the quote in the first Harry Potter book, where the wand chooses the wizard doesn't choose the wand. Sometimes I feel like being an author, God kind of chose it for me, or it kind of, it was kind of chosen for me. It's always been a part of me. Writing was always a part of me, always a part of my life. And so being an author just really developed through that. Next. Oh, this is a frequently asked question when we're at shows and just in general. My favorite character in each book. So this is a hard one for me to do because all of the characters really kind of become part of your life. You might hear other authors say that the characters sometimes even write the story as they're going and kind of take the author on their own whirlwind. But so from my very first book, The War Shall Rise Against Me, favorite character there is probably Charlotte. So she's the first main character that I ever really dove into. And so I would say for that reason, she's kind of my favorite for that. And then Be Strong and Steadfast, my second book. I think for that one, it would probably be AJ, America Joan. Just mainly her courage and her sense of adventure and her fearlessness when confronted with things that she has to go out and do. Plans for a Future of Hope, probably the favorite one there. This was actually a really tough one. There's a lot of characters in there. But I ended up finally going with Tabitha, just because she did what she thought was best, and she cared deeply for her family, and so that really has always resonated with me. And then from the Forward to What Lies Ahead, those are all the Turner series. For that one, probably after lots of thought on that one too, probably Becca, just because of the fact that she is so loyal. She's a teacher, so that was kind of close to my own heart, and she just really loved her students and working with kids. Then we go into some of the other books that I've got. The Wherever You Go, which is my prequel novella. Obviously, really enjoy the character of Augusta. It's because the reason that I actually wrote that book was for her. But another side character in that book that I really like is her friend Azalea. She just follows her heart and follows her gut. And she will definitely be getting her own book throughout the, eventually. Then we've got my Beyond the Island books. Beyond the Fort, Beyond the Island. These are my Key to Mackinac books. And when thinking about the favorite character in each of those, it actually ended up kind of being the same character. And that is the character of Simone. And I really just enjoyed that. She was always very kind, very friendly, very supportive. And I honestly think if I were to have a friend from any of the characters in any of my books, I would want it to be her. And so that is, most of my books and the favorite characters in there. Why did I choose to write about the Civil War? And this is from Jane. It's always been a time period that has fascinated me. As a teenager, early teen, I watched the miniseries North and South by John Jakes, and it really hit me. And so that's when I really started to like the Civil War and really just enjoy learning more about the time period. And, my mom got me involved in that. My grandpa got me involved in that. They were both big John Jakes fans as well. So they really brought that introduction into my life. And so that was a really positive thing as well. And then just, again, learning more about it. There's just so many stories that can come just from that. It really is incredible because each person has their own story, and there were so many people who were directly involved by it. Where did I get my ideas for my book covers? So that one's always been a tricky one. And, as much as you want to say, well, it's not the cover, it's what's inside that matters. But, you quickly learn when you're self-publishing, covers really do matter. And so really the covers that I've had, we really started with my first series, some really cool scenery from the different historic sites that we've been visiting. And so just kind of going through there and picking those out. And then, going with the Beyond the Island and Beyond the Fort, just kind of a little bit different with that. But this one actually, the first one, my junior high students actually helped me figure out the cover and kind of approve the cover. These are my young adult novels. And so it was really beneficial to talk to them and see what they thought of different covers. And then I actually have another book that I haven't talked about yet, but it is a middle grade novel, so ideal for grades 3 through 5. And we started off with this cover right here, which is a beautiful image. We've got cool railroad tracks in the back, and we've got a really cool fencing there. But it wasn't selling as much to the younger kids. And it kind of makes sense. It doesn't really grab at the younger kids. So we were talking about changing the cover up, and we were in Gettysburg for a book selling event. And we were kind of looking for different pictures to take. We were going to try to find maybe a kid reenactor. And we went to one of my favorite spots, Devil's Den. And I was hiking. My mom was down below, just probably getting our Kentucky Fried Chicken out and ready to go, because that's what we usually have when at Devil's Den. And we saw this gentleman right here, awesome young man, Landon. He is a historic interpreter, a reenactor. And he was just kind of sitting out, and he was just kind of striking some poses. And so we went up and talked to him and asked if he wanted to be on the cover of my book, if that was something that he would be willing to do. And he said yes. And so we kind of were able to do that. And I will say the book's been doing a lot better since then for that. So any aspiring authors who are watching this, you do want to make sure that you really do model a cover that's going to really hit for your target audience there. Because covers really do make a difference. So this next question is a spoiler alert. So just kind of a heads up on that. This one comes from my latest book that I have published, the Beyond the Island here. So in Beyond the Fort, we met Rafe, and he is one of the focal characters of the second book. And the question is from Kendall: why can't Rafe go back to the time he wants? So, part of that story is Rafe had initially, in the Beyond the Fort book, he had lived in 1775. And so in the second book, he's kind of feeling a little homesick, a little nostalgic. And so he wants to go back and just say hi to his friends. And it ends up where he is not necessarily taken back into the place that he wants to go, or the time that he wants to go. So in answer to the actual question, this is one of the mysteries of the keys. You don't go back to the time you want. It takes you to where you need to go. And so as the last two books come out and unravel as well, we will learn more about the mysteries of the key in these future books. Upcoming books. What are my upcoming books? This one is from Mary. So 2 of the books that I'm working on have no definitive titles yet. One, it takes place on most of it takes place on a Black Hills ranch in the late 1920s. And so, that one is in the editing stages, and it does not have a title yet, or at least a hardcore title yet. And then I'm also working on a young adult Civil War novel, and that one will mostly take place in Winchester, Virginia. But also one of the main characters is going to be a young man who will be, doing different experiences as well. And so it, will be a little bit different with that. But it'll mostly take place in Winchester. And then the last 2, Beyond the Mill and Beyond the Light, are going to be the last 2 books in the Key to Mackinac series. So that's going to be, and then other books, I've got so many different ideas for so many different books. But those are the ones that are really in the forefront of my mind right now that I'm kind of more actively working on. So this is from Jane. Are you going to write a reunion book with the Turner daughters? Yes. It's one of those that are kind of playing in the back of my mind. And I do have a little bit more, written down about it, some more hardcore ideas. This one will take place probably in Fredericksburg. The Turner family started in Fredericksburg. That's where the family farm is. So if there's going to be a reunion, I figured that's probably where it would be back at that family farm. Not quite sure yet if it'll be like a smaller novella or a full-scale novel. It'll likely be a full-scale novel. But I do have a Christmas novella coming out this Christmas that takes place in Petersburg. So it kind of comes after that family and tells a little bit more about that. Next is from Rose. What character, if any, is based off you? This is also a question that's asked to me very often. There's really not one in particular that is like me, based off of me. The different traits that they have, the different experiences that they have, they pop up in all my main, those experiences that pop up in my main characters, a lot of them come from me, a lot of their characteristics. So there's really not one that, really stands out that's, more about me. But like little pieces of each of the main characters from that. This is from Helen. Oh, and another spoiler alert question. Spoiler, so if you have not yet read the flagship book, The War Shall Rise Against Me, it's a spoiler for that. So did Jenny Wade really die in the Battle of Gettysburg? So Jenny Wade is an actual historic figure. Most of my books do have some actual historic figures in them. And so that is a big piece of my writing, especially in my Turner Daughters novels. At least one of the main characters in those books is an actual historic figure. And so when I do my research, which there's some questions later on about the research, for those main characters that are actual historic figures, most of my big pieces of those stories, those main things that happened to them, did indeed actually happen. Now, I did add in some details. Of course, there's characters that I've created that help tell the story of the actual historic figure, but most of the big things did indeed happen. So I guess a short answer to that is yes, she did. And you can read more about it and read more about the story through that. So again, just added in some details of their life, some of the things that could have happened but didn't necessarily happen, but a lot of those big events. So in Gettysburg, Jenny Wade being one of the main character, a lot of those major things about her and what she did during the Battle of Gettysburg is true. Be Strong and Steadfast, main character there that's real is Kate Corbin. If you've read that book, you know that she has a lot of tragedy in her life. Those big moments did indeed happen as well. in Plans for a Future of Hope. Mary Green is the main character in there, who's an actual historic figure. Kind of her claim to fame during that siege is that big event that happens to her in that siege. If you've read the book, you know about that. That actually did happen as well. That's kind of how I learned about her. Thought that was a pretty fascinating story. And then Forward to What Lies Ahead. Major main character there is young Molly Tatum and what happened there. Molly was actually a little bit harder to talk about because there's actually not a lot of details about her life. So I will say I took a little bit more fictional liberties about her, but her background, her family, the rumors that were being spread by people around her, and what happens at the end with her special friend, those are all pretty well documented to actually have had happen. And then her role in the war, especially in the cattle raid, that actually did happen as well. So definitely take these actual historic figures and, you know, their experiences are the basis for my stories. Next question. When did I start writing? Probably since I could hold a crayon. It's, you know, everybody has their own creative talent, whether they realize it or not. I really think everybody has some creative talent, some way that they can, you know, let their creative juices flow and get that outlet. Some people paint, some people sing, some people write music. Writing novels has always kind of been that for me. So I've been writing my whole life. In fact, my old bedroom upstairs has become my mother's library, and it's chock full of little books that I wrote when I was in grade school myself. So I've always really been writing. As for the more official writing, I started The War Shall Rise Against Me. Really got that idea in 2005. Went on a family trip to Gettysburg, heard the story of Jenny Wade, wanted to tell more about it, and it took me a while because I was still in college, and then I had to get my teaching degree, student teaching, and get through those first few years of teaching, which is, you know, it's a lot of work. It was a lot of fun, learned a lot, but it was a lot of work. And finally got that first book actually published in late November 2015. And when I say late November, I remember clearly I actually hit submit and publish on Thanksgiving night after I got home from a delicious turkey dinner. So, you know, I've really been writing for such a long time and really, you know, just, yeah, really enjoy it. And it's just really, as long as I can remember, it's been a part of my life. Have I visited all the places that I write about from Rosie? Yes, and that is by far one of my favorite parts of my whole writing experience and the research process. I am an extremely visual person. I'm constantly, even when I'm writing, I'm constantly looking up images and looking up pictures of the places that I'm writing about. I'm working on the Winchester book right now, and as I'm writing, I've got just some images of Winchester on a Google presentation, and then I set it for full screen, and so I can kind of feel like I'm writing within those Winchester images. And sometimes I even have like a person or an actor in my mind of who the characters look like. I don't often share that because I like you characters to be able to, or you readers to be able to picture the characters on your own, not necessarily what I see. But so for that document, I'll also have like some pictures of actors that I have for that person, and then of the real actual historic figures in the Winchester book. I've got their pictures on that kind of collage as well. So visualization is huge for me. So I need to be able to go and visit those places. I get so much inspiration too, just from walking around and experiencing these places. I never intended to really go out and never really set out to be an author, like I said earlier, but I for sure never intended to write as many books as I have. And I clearly remember I had this Gettysburg book idea, and then we took another family vacation down south to Williamsburg and Jamestown and Yorktown down in Virginia. And on our way down, we stopped at Fredericksburg. And so we're walking around a really cool old house. It's actually so cool that it's the cover here, Stafford, over on Stafford Heights. And it is a beautiful area. It's now the head of the National Historic Parks for Fredericksburg as well. And as we're walking around those grounds, I'm like coming up with ideas in my head of more of what I can write. And, so then I figured I could tie all the books together. And so really visiting the places is so huge to me. And really just really getting out there and experiencing them. And so really a lot of my vacations, I walk around with a little mini notebook in my pocket and a pen so that I can write down any information, any inspiration that comes to me as it happens. So very much need, not only do I visit all the places, I need to visit the places. And in fact, there's a couple of ideas that I have loosely in the back of my head that I really want to start focusing on now so that I can go on a vacation there, like Alaska. So, yeah, definitely, again, I kind of need to go visit those places and to walk around. So this is from Sue. What made you decide to change your writing to time travel? Well, I worked in Mackinac City for 2 summers, and I had ideas about that story, about going back in time. I worked as a historical interpreter. Shout out to all of my Mackinac State Historic Parks people out there. And we would often talk about how cool it would be to go back in time and to meet those who we were historically interpreting. And so me and my overactive imagination really went out and, had some of these notes written, had some of these ideas. And so it kind of started off with that. Now, back in those days, it was going to be more of a, and I don't want to say an adult novel because it still would have been as clean as my other books, but kind of more geared toward adults. But then I also got this idea of writing more young adult novels. And, I work 6 hours of my day. I spend 6 hours of my day with that target audience. And it was really something I wanted to write I wanted to write stuff for young adults as well. And so the idea of time travel and adventure really fit with that whole thing. And so that's kind of why I transitioned that particular novel to more young adults. So actually it wasn't, it was kind of more of me changing that story from time travel. It wasn't me changing my stories from regular to time travel. It was more actually taking an idea that I'd had back in 2009 and 2010 and putting it into young adults. So that was kind of more that. It just really fit. And it's actually been a very popular one and a really fun one to watch and write about. This one is from Tina. What book is my favorite? So each one, this is always an interesting one. I get this one a lot too. Each one of my books is special, kind of like children, like students, but like my nieces and nephews. It's really hard to pick one. You kind of like them all for different reasons. I usually, when I get asked that question, I usually go with the newest one. Just because it's the newest one. It's kind of like your baby. And so for an answer to this question right now, I would say the Forward to What Lies Ahead, the Petersburg book, or Beyond the Island, the newest book in that one. Or the one that I'm working on right now, because that one's always kind of fun as well. Hi, Mama Heckman. All right. So what is my favorite place to visit in Mackinac? So there are, and especially living up there for 2 summers, it is so hard to pick just one place. And so many of those places hold such fond memories for me for so many different reasons. And it's not just about the living up there for 2 summers. One of the reasons that I wanted that job in the first place was because I loved it so much up there. We spent so much of my time up there on family vacations when I was growing up that it was just, it's such a special place to me. And I know it's a special place to a lot of people in Michigan as well, and a lot of people from the areas surrounding it. And so, there's just so many places. And most of those places I touch upon and kind of give little shout outs to within the book. And I'll continue to touch on them in future books as well. But if I were to pick one place, it would probably be Michilimackinac State Park. That's the park that's right between the fort and the lighthouse, and you've got a beautiful view of the bridge. Extremely picturesque. You can see the island. You can see the Upper Peninsula, and I just think that it's a great place to sit and write and work and just be and just think and spend time with family. It's always fun to watch nieces and nephews and children chase after seagulls. So it's a really fun place to be. Next from Anne. Why did you pick the cities you chose for the Turner Daughter books? So I kind of touched upon this a little bit with one of the earlier questions. So as I've said, all of my books in the Turner Daughter series have a main character who's an actual historic figure. So that's kind of a big piece. Can I find a character that's that riveting and can base it in that city? Also, the 4 cities, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, Fredericksburg, Virginia, Vicksburg, Mississippi, and Petersburg, Virginia, they're 4 cities that got hit very hard by the war. There were others, and cities like Nashville, down in Georgia, there was a couple of cities hit hard. There's New Bern, North Carolina was one of the first places taken over by the Union and had a lot of hospitals and things like that. Those are places that I definitely plan on exploring later. But to start off with the 4-book series, they really just seem to all fit, and they could all fit together. And they're also very fun to go off and visit. All right. Do you have a Civil War soldier that you like best? Well, yeah. I mean, the history nerd in me, I really do like a lot of them. A lot of them fascinate me. A lot of them from both sides. But if I had to choose one, there's a more lesser known Civil War soldier named James Power Smith. And just everything that I've learned about him, I really like. He was in Stonewall Jackson's brigade. He was a very close advisor of Stonewall Jackson. And he just seems like, from everything that I've written from him, he seems like a really nice guy, friendly guy. And so he was actually very fascinating. He will also show up in my Winchester book as the childhood crush of one of the main characters. Got him right there. So Mr. James Power Smith, very interesting guy. And so, yeah, he's, like I said, kind of covered in Be Strong and Steadfast. And like I said, too, he'll be in the Winchester book as well. How did you learn about your real characters? This question is from Carol. So research is the big piece. Reading books, whether they were, I did read a couple fiction books to kind of get some ideas, but most of my research comes from nonfiction, and a lot of them comes from primary sources, like the journals and the diaries or letters that we might be able to have. I also do a lot of talking with historians. In fact, there is a historian from Fredericksburg, John Hennessy. He is one of the premier historians about civilians in the Civil War. And he actually, when I was researching Fredericksburg, which is where he's based, he gave me information that's not even available to the public. So I was really able to get a lot of information from him there. And so visiting the historic places is also very important. And also just walking around where they would have lived or visited. And so that is a really great resource. Another great resource, I met so many guys in Gettysburg that are huge for me learning. Gary Edelman is a great source, and he is actually very big in the American Battlefield Trust Organization. So if you're more interested in the Civil War, the American Battlefield Trust is a treasure trove of information. And for any elementary, middle school, or high school teachers who teach the Civil War, you need to check that out too, because they have curriculum. And not only do they have awesome curriculum, but it is free. So really good resource as well. I still go back to that, and they've got great videos that kind of cover Civil War topics in 4 minutes. I'm actually teaching the Civil War to my 8th graders right now. And that's a big part of what we're learning online now. So, we're learning about the election of 1864 on Monday. And so one of their assignments that I gave them last week was watch this video, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it. So it's really great for that. And then also kind of going with that same vein with me teaching however I can, I have, teacher guide for my Sammy Struggle book. And so that's just another way for me. Sometimes people also ask, getting a little off topic here, but that's okay. A lot of times people ask, well, why even write? Why are you even interested in doing this? I'm a teacher, and I really enjoy teaching in any way that I can. And so through this writing, it's just another way for me to be able to go out and teach. So, that's another piece about me and what I do, and kind of the behind the scenes of what I do. All right, next from Kayla, do you like giving talks? That is actually something that came about really kind of organically, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term. Just meeting so many people. And then I would talk to people from different historical societies. I would meet awesome reenactors who are involved in historical societies. And so these historical societies and these people kept asking, would you be interested in giving talks? And so it was something that I was very unsure of at first, but then I'm like, well, yeah, it's not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. And I didn't even like public speaking as a child. It actually was a thing that I did not like doing at all whatsoever, but I really do enjoy it now. Again, it's another way for me to share knowledge and to share more about what I love. And I do it as a job now. I talk in front of kids almost every day. So I do still get nervous, but I do really enjoy it. There is I've given them, I have a main one, but some of the talks that I've given include Civil War civilians. I've done one on how I research for my novels for the Grand Rapids Genealogical Society. I've done in Algoma Township. I've done one for Otsego. For that one, it was a reenactor I met named Beverly who really helped put me up with the Otsego Historical Society. And I also did one about, for a Michigan Writers Conference, I did one on researching a historical novel. And so it's just another fun way for me, not only to meet people, because I'm meeting people and I get to make all of these different people, again, I keep going back to this, but the people I've met have been awesome, my reenactors. Again, maybe going off a little bit of a tangent with this question, but my plans for a Future of Hope novel, I've got 2 reenactors that I've met often. This one's actually, dedicated to reenactors. But then I've got 2 reenactors, Tabitha and Jessica with the Michigan Cavalry Brigade. I just enjoyed them so much in their stories that, they became characters in my book. So it's really interesting, the different people that I get to meet through my talks, through going to these different places. So I really do enjoy giving talks, and I'm actually very loosely outlining, mostly in my head, a talk that I want to give about the Mackinac Straits area. Really being able, so those, the Otsego Historical Society, for one thing, I was done with my civilians talk, and they're like, well, do you have any other talks? Like, well, I don't have anything actually really planned out, but I've got some ideas. I said I have an idea for Mackinac, and they really like that idea. I mean, again, if you're from Michigan, you kind of have a soft spot for Mackinac in your heart. And so that's another reason that I do like giving talks. And again, meeting the different people and talking to different people about what I love. All right. So the next one, this has a little mini spoiler, I guess, if you haven't read Beyond the Fort. This is from Brianne. I read Beyond the Fort. Does Rafe like living in this time period? Well, I think so. Pretty sure he does overall. I kind of liken this to the fact that you move someplace and you get a little homesick. And in Rafe's case, he was getting homesick, but he can't just call or FaceTime his friends from back home and his family from back home. So, why his adventure starts in Beyond the Island is simply because of that, because he is homesick and because he just wants to go visit those family and friends. But overall, I think a kid like Rafe would like our time period. For those of you who don't know, he got into American Ninja Warrior and he got into sports and different things like that. And so, I think overall, yeah, he does like living in this time period. But when we move, it's nice to also come back home and see, those places that we grew up in. All right, if I could be any of my characters, who would I be? That is another tough one. That is a very tough one. I mean, any of the characters in my books would be cool to kind of experience life from them. I really think it would be fun to be a character in one of my new books because I think the Black Hills are absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, and it takes place on a ranch, and I really like that ranch feeling. To just be able to go take a ride on horseback whenever I want. That would be a really cool thing. So maybe that one. But this one's also from David. I really think if I were to pick anybody, it would either be Sadie or Christine from my Mackinac series. One, they get to live in Mackinac, and that's just awesome. They get to live in Mackinac year-round, and I've actually gotten an opportunity to live in Mackinac in the fall once the main tourist attractions have either closed or are having really limited hours. I've gone to live up there in the fall, and it's awesome. It really is. So to be able to live up there year-round would be amazing. I have never been up there in the winter, but I hear it's beautiful and gorgeous and would really like that. So I think I'd be Christine and Sadie, not only because they get to live in Mackinac City, but also because they get to go back in time and experience that, but then still be able to come home and use indoor plumbing. Because I will say, if I were to live in a historic time period or to go back in time, that would be a big thing that I would miss, would be my indoor plumbing. I like camping, but I also like flushable toilets. And the last pre-question that I have is my favorite part of writing. And I get this question a lot as well. I really like the whole process. Getting ideas. I like getting ideas and thinking about different things. Another future book, I really was kind of fleshing out a little bit in my brain over spring break because I was able to spend spring break at another home that is very near and dear to me. It's my family farm on my mom's side of the family. So I got to spend a couple nights out there and walking around through the woods that my ancestors owned and grew up on in the farm there. And then I saw this old picture of my great-grandmother when I think it was her high school graduation picture. And this, oh my goodness. So one of my books is she's going to be one of my main characters in a future book just because she was so stinking awesome. She lived in the time period when, there was a lot of restrictions on different people, but she ran track and women especially. She ran track and field. She was a deputy to the Cedar Creek Police Department or Muskegon County Police Department, something like that. She was a deputy. She was just a really awesome woman. And so like those little things, just those little nuggets. And, one of my favorite parts of writing is learning about these people and being able to tell their story. And so that's just kind of a really cool thing as well. I like the research. That was actually something that very much surprised me, was the fact that I was able to research and read these books and get this information. And that's actually been a really cool thing for me as well. Writing the actual stories down and the scenes and kind of putting it together and piecing it together has been really cool. And also polishing it and going through and seeing how you can make it better. I don't love the editing and formatting part, but it's also fun to kind of go back and look through it again. I said before when I was talking about visiting the different places, that is a huge thing that I really like. And then, kind of putting it all together again, the people that I meet is a really cool part of my writing. We had a couple questions come in as the live feed was going. Are you writing another Turner Daughters series where you tie up the stories? So, yeah, so there's going to be a sequel, I guess you could say. And it's going to kind of be like a Turner-daughter reunion story. I kind of mentioned this earlier before, but, we did leave so many of them kind of out. And I'm unsure of one of the things that I haven't really focused on yet is the when. I almost want it to be about a year after the war ended so that kind of there's been more development and there's more to actually catch up. But then I also like different ideas about, just different things. There's still a lot of things that I have to kind of flesh through. But yeah, I definitely plan on having that, wrapping some of those things up. And not only that, like different characters are going to have their own stories that's going to help wrap that up. Two of my younger characters in Plans for a Future of Hope, Brienne and Kendall, they were two cousins of one of the main characters, Victoria. I've got definite plans for those two young ladies, and they're each getting their own stories. And so definitely have other sequels coming, or kind of spin-offs, if you will, that will definitely help tie up some of the stories of some of those main characters. And thank you, Leanne, for that, and for one of the coolest things too, getting these comments even on here, how people love my writing. That is something that I never expected. In fact, when I wrote my very first book, I thought I might read it, and that would be cool, and maybe my mommy would read it, and I knew my grandparents would read it as well. And I just never really thought that they would take off as they did. I didn't think that it would get as big as it is. We've sold over close to 4,000 copies of all of them. And I have people constantly asking, when's the next one out? And, sales, especially, the past couple months, have actually been really high on the Amazon and Kindle level. It's very unfortunate that we haven't been able to do some of our bigger shows. One of my very favorite shows was one of the first to get canceled because of the unfortunate time that we're going through. The Kalamazoo Living History show. And I was really bummed about that one, because they talk about Kalamazoo Living History show is an awesome event where you've got vendors and people selling stuff from a lot of the American history, French and Indian War, War of 1812, up to the Civil War. And I was loving that was supposed to be the actual release date for Beyond the Island, because of its connections to those early time periods. And so really just I never really expected it to take off as much as it has, and to be able to, for everybody that's been supporting me, to be able to talk to you guys, to be able to communicate with you guys and really touch base with you guys right now is awesome. And so it's just, I've never anticipated any of this, and I am extremely thankful for all of my people that are readers, my loyal readers especially, those individuals who kind of do the first rounds of readings for me so I can get that early feedback and that early review. My family, to put up with a lot of different things as well, with that, my travels, and the biggest of things, of course, goes to my mom. Everybody is all like, well, you do so much and you do all this. Well, let's be honest, I write and I do a little bit of editing and I show up to the events. She pretty much does everything else. Organizing the events, editing the books, finding different things for me to do. So just really thankful for everybody that has played a role in this little, I guess you could call it, it's a journey. And I really don't know if I'll ever stop. I don't know if I'll ever run out of things to write about, to talk about. There's just so many stories, and my ideas notebook is chock full of different ideas. So that is pretty much all that I've got in ways of questions to answer. I am always available for questions or answers on Facebook. You can write on my wall, or you can private message me. You can always email me as well. I'm also on Instagram if that's your preferred method of social media. And so really just like talking to people, answering questions. And like I said, I got this whole idea just because I was really missing touching base with people and talking about what I'm doing. So thank you guys very much. Everybody that's either watching live or watching later, thank you so much for coming and spending some little time with me by my fireside. It would be way better if I actually had a fire going in there, but it's too warm. The weather that we've been having lately is beautiful. So that is, kind of all that I have for tonight. But again, if you have any questions, or, hey, a lot of, I talked earlier about the American Battlefield Trust. If I get enough interest, maybe we can have a Zoom meeting and we can talk history on a Zoom meeting or something along those lines. There's like 5 or 6 different online conferencing platforms that I've used so far this whole time. So if anybody even wants to have a little discussion, or we can have like a little roundtable discussion, that would be kind of fun too. So I'm up for just about anything when it comes to that. I really miss my readers, really miss talking to people at my shows. So yeah, I'm open to a lot of different ideas. So at any rate, that is pretty much all I've got. So everybody have a wonderful rest of your weekend and have a great rest of your day. And also to all the mothers, grandmothers, godmothers, etc. out there, have a very happy Mother's Day tomorrow. And I hope that you guys at least get to touch base with all of your families tomorrow as well. So have a great day. And I will, just for a Mother's Day special, if you haven't gotten any of those books, I'll leave the sale open until Monday. So pick up any of the books that you'd like online. They're about as cheap as we can get them to go right now. So you won't get them much cheaper. So I'll leave that extended till Monday. So enjoy your weekend.